The Empowered Empaths Self-Protection Bootcamp. Day 2. Guilt. Guilt is a massive issue that controls many empaths' life. I often say we want road trips, not guilt trips. But the true reality is, if people are guilt tripping you, then it's highly likely you live a life in servitude of others, where you people please, you go above and beyond for them, and inadvertently you end up neglecting your own needs, wants, and desires. If you have any clue about what you need. You see, for many empathic people that make it to the therapy room, they think it's selfish to put themselves first. And getting over that can take some time, especially if they've had a life where they've been guilt tripped, because that has shaped their way of seeing the world. That shapes the way they think and feel when they prioritize themselves and they do something to themselves. It's incredibly uncomfortable. And because that feeling is so uncomfortable, like a tight pair of new shoes, they change their behavior. They concede, they say yes when they know they said no, should say no, in order to not feel uncomfortable. I'm here to tell you, empathic individual with a heart that cares, that sees the best in people, that you must learn to sit with guilt and befriend it. In fact, your first action point today is to note down what you say to yourself when you experience guilt. That voice in your head, the comments and statements and suggestions that you make to yourself when you experience guilt, is exactly the reason you do what it is that other people want you to do. If you can take the time to note down what it is that you say to yourself, you'll begin to see that what you say is incredibly unhelpful and is often a fear-based statement. Fear-based statements keep us stuck, keep us doing the same thing even though we know it's not working for us. It's where we go around in that vicious cycle, wanting change, yet not being able to take the steps to bring it about. Guilt trips are often about control and manipulation by others, combined with our unhealthy relationship with fear. Empaths, you have an unhealthy relationship with fear. I'ma tell you to your face. Well, I'm going to tell you to your earlobes today. That combination becomes incredibly unhelpful. And it's one of the reasons why highly empathic people, highly sensitive souls, often end up in the therapy room, confused and baffled about why life is hurting them so much. Guilt will determine the quality of your life. Therefore, it is in your best interests to begin to befriend guilt. To be frank, I don't really know any way else around it. What I encourage you to think about is healthy selfishness. Healthy selfishness. And as I said before, self-care isn't necessarily about getting your nails, your eyebrows done, having a massage. Yeah, we're upgrading that in 2021. Self-care is also about how we allow and enable others to treat us. So take a moment to note down what it is that you say to yourself when you experience guilt. Guilt and empaths have an unhealthy relationship. Guilt, in the words of Janet Jackson, is always about control. Now, I know I've got different age groups here, but if you're a child in the 80s, you know she had a great album called Control. Anyone using guilt trips on you is controlling you. Now, I don't know about you, but I want to be in the driving seat of my life. I want to be in control of my life. That, I believe, is my right. I want to be able to exercise my own capacity to choose, to decide, to express my free will. When people guilt trip you, you must ask yourself, who is in the driving seat of your life? Again, I would like you to take a moment to note down 3 people that guilt trip you. Just 3. You may not have 3. You may only have 1. Either way, note the name down. Guilt is a massive factor in abusive relationships. It's one of the reasons people get into this kind of battle within themselves where they have incredible conflict. I see it time and time again in the abusive relationships that empaths get embroiled with narcissistic individuals. The guilt is prolific. And if the empath is not able to get a handle on their guilt, they will be controlled. And their life, their desires, their wants and needs will become reduced and minimized. Therefore, it's important to notice, say for example, you've come from a very toxic, unhelpful family. You may have even had a narcissistic parent, or you may even have a narcissistic boss or supervisor, even a friend. Empaths are able to sustain relationships with very unnecessarily difficult people. Why is this? Why are we able to tolerate them? Because of our empathy. You see, it's in your name. Empaths. Everybody goes around calling themselves empaths now. Well, it means you score highly on the trait of empathy, which may mean you are very understanding of others. May also mean you have a high tolerance of nonsense from others. Why? Because you can explain away and justify nonsense behavior based on what you understand about that person. So you take the information you know about them to justify bad behavior, inadequate behavior. This is one of the reasons why unnecessarily difficult people will be drawn to you. But also, if you've been brought up in a family with unnecessarily difficult parents, for example, you would have already developed a repertoire of skills to be able to manage people, to keep them cool, to keep them happy, to manage their demands. But every time you do so, you diminish yourself. And we set a precedence for the unnecessarily difficult person that we will accommodate and go above and beyond for them. This is one of the reasons why when you try to change your behavior, people will guilt trip you to get you back in the box that they've created for you. I'm here to tell you, if people guilt trip you, they are benefiting from your compliance. And should you desire to change, they will have a massive issue with that. They may have told you you need to change. You may need to sort yourself out, but they didn't really think you would do it. Therefore, and pay attention, if people have lifestyles that are built upon your compassion and selflessness, these people will not want you to change and they will fight it. Empathic people draw unnecessarily difficult people to them. And you need to understand this in order to break unhelpful cycles. Invertedly, unconsciously, we do it to ourselves. From an unconscious perspective, the more conscious you can become, that empowers you to make very different choices. You see, empaths are too understanding for our own good when we're not aware that empathy can absolutely flip and work against us. We must learn to protect and guard our empathy. It's our greatest gift. But if you don't learn to protect it, it will become that word I often hear in therapy, a curse. Key, it feels like a curse to care. With any gift comes responsibility. It is our responsibility as highly empathic people to learn how best to protect ourselves. That is your duty. And if you don't learn to protect it, it will be abused. Your empathy will be abused. You must learn to protect it. Learning to sit with guilt is not easy. It's uncomfortable, like having a wedgie. Sometimes you don't want to pull it out in public. It's not the right time. So you just kind of have to live with it. But guilt functions in the same way. It's incredibly uncomfortable when we experience guilt. We become overwhelmed by the emotion. We feel bad and we want to remedy the situation, so we make a knee-jerk reaction, conceding, potentially doing what others want us to do. I'm here to encourage you to stand firm, befriend that feeling, experience that feeling, and then capture the dialogue that happens in your head. What do you say to you when you're experiencing guilt? That vocabulary is very invaluable to us. In my therapy practice, it's that vocabulary that we extract, that we then inspect. Often that vocabulary, the dialogue we say to ourselves when we're experiencing guilt, is actually irrational. But the reality is, because we've never stopped to inspect it, we just take it as a whole and we give in to others. Let's slow it right down. Slow jam time. Big up to my 90s crew. We want to slow down to be able to inspect and notice exactly what it is that we say to ourselves. That empowers us to work out whether we're justified or unjustified, whether it's irrational or irrational what we say to ourselves. Don't let guilt control your life. It's incredibly uncomfortable. And one of the things with guilt, what happens is that we react. React is knee-jerk. You experience the guilt and then you react. That's how you lose your power, because then you do what others want you to do. And what I'm encouraging you to think about is, how do you respond? That's where you pause. Take a moment. And I have a fiery character. And over the years, I've learned to pause, to collect my thoughts before I just used to respond. I just used to react. React, giving away all my power. Now, as an empowered, empathic woman, I pause, consider my thoughts, and respond accordingly. I have now created a reaction within me that if someone is guilt-tripping me, I simply ask the question, are you guilt-tripping me? Ooh! Always a great question to ask my empaths. If you think you're being guilt-tripped, ask the person if you feel safe to do so. So the encouragement is that you stop reacting and learn to respond. I want to take a moment for you to consider 3 ways that people guilt trip you. 3 ways that people make you feel bad about you. Often people are really great at finding our vulnerabilities, and they squeeze that when they want us to do whatever it is they want us to do for them. The more empowered you become aware of those weaknesses. And you empower yourself by being aware of it. Therefore, someone can't use that against you. How can you use something against me when I've empowered myself? Therefore, you deactivate that power from them and empower yourself. And that is also key to your greatness, to becoming empowered, to moving away from being depressed and sad. Because the reality is, guilt trips will, in the long run, leave you sad, depressed, and baffled by life. At worst, you may lose touch with your own reactions, your own mind. Your decision process may become incredibly vulnerable. It's why gaslighting is so damaging, because people lose faith in their capacity to decide. Now, the reality is, as a highly empathic person, you may want change. You may want something different for your life. But your relationship with fear holds so much power over your life. And what I find more and more frequently is we live inside the confines of our tiny minds. We tell ourselves a little story that we can't or we shouldn't, or we believe it will be so colossal if we change, that the fear becomes induced and we take zero action. It is the inaction that is so difficult for the human spirit. And one of the reasons why is because you are designed for growth. You are designed for change. Change is a part of all life forms, not just humans. You see it in flowers, insects, animals. You are designed for growth. You are designed for change. Yet, if our tiny mind believes in all the fear-mongering, then we will stay stuck. And it is in your comfort zone that you will stagnate, and you will lose your power, and you will decline. That's why so many people are becoming depressed. The key is to embrace the fear. Embrace the fear. That's why we sit with the guilt. That is one way of embracing the fear. And then the next question I pose to you is, what's the worst that can happen? I know for sure that many empaths overthink situations and they hesitate. It's the hesitation that paves way for more thinking. Hesitation results in us not taking action. Therefore, instead of acting, we wait. Instead of being proactive, we become reactive. Therefore, we may wait for an external situation to happen before we make changes. This, in the long run, can be disempowering for you. Disempowered people become depressed and sad and anxious. Is that what you want for you? Or do you want to become an empowered person? I know what I want for you. I'd like you to consider one tiny action you need to take to manage your guilt. Reflect on yesterday's session, which focused on auditing your phone. What action, tiny action, do you need to take to manage your guilt? Taking action is fundamental to your greatness. In the confines of your tiny mind, where you hypothesize about, if I did this, this will happen, that will happen, this will happen, this will happen, is a fallacy. Therefore, taking tiny actions enables you to get some feedback from the environment. You notice what happens, and that can empower you to take further tiny actions. Where the ripples are less profound, you do not go into panic, and you get a sense of reward. And even if things don't go as you planned, you just get feedback. NLP taught me that there is no failure, only feedback. Many empathic people think in extremes, failure or success. That type of thinking is incredibly unhelpful for you, because it means you never get out of the starting gates. You never try. A baby that starts to walk begins to walk. Why? It falls down, it tries again. That's how the child learns. In fact, that's how you learn to walk. What's happened in your adult life that you've forgotten the essence of who you are? I hope this bootcamp series is of benefit to you. Next, we look at green flags. Green flags, yes. You know all about your red ones. Let's spend some time looking at the green flag situations and people that are beneficial to you. I hope this video and this audio will be of benefit to you. Do take care of you, because if you don't,